So if you've played Dark Souls, you've probably died, and probably a lot. And the natural progression of thought really is that you wonder if other players have struggled as much as you have. Did they die where you died? Did they suck as much as you suck? Did they also die to the Moonlight Butterfly several times? Which may or may not have actually happened.
Land, you stupid!
No, they didn't. Well, luckily for you, I stumbled upon a Twitter post not too long ago from a user named Drift Item, and he had some really interesting data on where people died the most in Dark Souls. Initially, all I found was the main area of Lordran, but upon visiting his Twitter page and searching through his posts, I was able to find data on almost every area in the game. Now, this data is a little dated, it's from way back in 2018, and mysteriously, he stopped posting in that same year for some reason, which really sucks because the last post he made talked about how he was working on Dark Souls 2. Honestly, I feel like that one might be even more interesting. But regardless, he made some really interesting findings, and in this video, we're going to go over them all and try and answer the question of where have people died the most in Dark Souls? Now, just to be upfront with you, a lot of his data does not have like actual numbers. For instance, we may not know exactly how many people died in Blighttown, but we can tell which areas people died the most in. So that'll be our focus. So before we get into all the data, let's talk about how he was able to accomplish this so you understand where this is coming from. So he was able to do this through the bloodstain mechanic that is in Dark Souls. If you don't know, when a player dies, you can see a bloodstain in the game. And if you interact with that bloodstain, it will show you the path of what took place just before that player died and then when the player died. In order for you to be able to view that in the game, every player is connected to what's called a P2P network, which stands for player to player, which is the same thing that allows you to read and write messages, to do invasions, and then of course the bloodstain mechanic. So what he was able to do was he created his own client that connected to that network and then captured all the data that was being shared across players. So if you don't understand what that means, basically he created a digital neckbeard that stood there with a pair of binoculars and just kind of stared into the window while your death's undressed. There's probably a better way to put that, but you get the point. People died and he was able to capture the data from it. Now, a little caveat here, this is not all of deaths in all of Dark Souls history. This is just for the period of time that he ran the client and was able to capture a large piece of data, which amounted to between 20 to 42,000 bloodstains and 53,000 messages. So not all of history, but a large piece of data that you can kind of get inclinations from or get an idea of the general flow of where people die at. So with all that out of the way, let's jump into the first set of data he compiled, which was the area of Lordran. So obviously orange means death, those are bloodstains, and then the blue are messages, which is why Solaire's area is lit up like a Christmas tree. Praise the sun! So on this particular map, there are 12,000 bloodstains and 8,000 messages. Now some things that are pretty obvious and are generally in line with what you would expect is of course the Capra Demon. Obviously that's going to be lit up super bright. Now, but there is a caveat with that. I'll say it's a really small area, so you know, fewer deaths make a brighter light there just because of the size of it. But still, obviously a ton of people die to the Capra Demon, so that makes total sense. Hellkite Bridge is also really bright, which is because of the dragon. You know, you have the fire and all that, and running down the stairs, and then you get knocked off the edge by a freaking skeleton, or the rats poison you, and freaking, you know, all the Hellkite stuff, regular Hellkite stuff. The Taurus Demon is a hot spot as well, of course. I mean, it's an early boss, easy boss, but you have a lot of new players that probably die a lot to it, rolling off the edge, getting smashed by his big hammer. Not that hammer, you freaking freaks. And then of course you have the gargoyles, which is, you know, a dual boss fight. Those are notorious for killing a lot of players. Not terribly hard, but if we're being honest, I bet a lot of people make it to the gargoyles, die a bunch, and they probably don't ever make it past that. Or, you know, it's kind of like a roadblock that stops a lot of players from getting to these other areas that are harder, but not as many players reach it. But here's some things that surprised me. Number one, Sen's Fortress. Like, what the F? I would think that this would be like a freaking red belly, you know what I'm saying? Like someone lifted up the shirt of Dark Souls and went slapping away till it was just bright pink. Am I the only one that doesn't think this is weird? And then what is going on with the Iron Golem? Like, I understand there are a lot of people that roll off the edge on accident, or the grab attack chucks you off the side, but Iron Golem is like one of the biggest pushovers in the entire game, so it doesn't seem like this area should be that bright. Now, maybe some people don't know to go kill the big giant chucking stuff, and perhaps that's why they die, or a lot of people die. I don't know. The Iron Golem just doesn't seem like it should be that bright. But the last and most suspicious thing is the Bed of Chaos. How in the world is the Bed of Chaos not freaking beaming? How could you not see the Bed of Chaos from space? Like, that area alone, plus the boss, so janky, rolling in the freaking holes, getting smacked by the tree limb, and no matter where you land when you get smacked, you slide 15 feet till you fall to your death. It's ridiculous. The Bed of Chaos, this makes no sense. Now, something that doesn't really make sense until you think about it for a second is Gwyn's arena. Gwyn's super easy if you parry, but a lot of people might not even do that or know that he is easy if you do that. So maybe they're fighting him straight up, and that's why a lot of people died there. But one weird thing about it is the Black Knights on the way to Gwyn didn't seem to kill hardly anybody, which is strange. I mean, the Black Knights are pretty tough unless you are good at getting behind them and hitting the backstab, I guess. Maybe people figured that out by the time they get to the end game. I don't know, but his arena just seemed a little weird. Now, all of that is really interesting, but I'm sure that you are probably wondering two big questions. What about Blighttown? And what about Anor Londo? Well, thankfully, there are actually separate maps for each one of those. So we'll go over them real fast, starting with Anor Londo. So in this area, we have 17,462 deaths recorded and 7,448 messages. And as you can see, there were a lot of deaths in this area, which I'm sure you can relate to. Some obvious hotspots are, of course, the archers, the notorious Anor Londo archers that blast you off of the edge with their giant, humongous arrows. I'm sure this is a surprise to no one, but yes, of course, a lot of people died here. I do think that it should probably be brighter than that, though. I mean, I would imagine that, I mean, for me at least, I got friggin' effed by those arrows all the time. Why do I keep saying that? They oiled me up. Never mind. But then, of course, you also have the Silver Knights just past that, and they have obviously killed a ton of people as well. The ones with the swords aren't super bad because you can bait their like stab attack and then run around and backstab them. But the ones with the effing spears, bro, I swear, the way they have more range than you expect. The spinny attack they do hits you no matter when you dodge. It's freaking dumb. But yeah, I'm sure they're probably the majority of the deaths. Now, the path leading up to ONS isn't too bright, but it's also a wider, more open area. So I feel like it's a little deceiving because probably a lot of deaths are in that area, but because it's so big, it just doesn't look as bright as it actually is, if that makes sense. And then, of course, you have ONS. Ornstein and Smo themselves, which is the brightest area that we have seen yet, which makes total sense to me. Now, I know the moment I post this, there are going to be, 15 people in the comments that are saying, what are you talking about? Get good. ONS is the easiest boss in the game. I first tried him with my hands behind my back. Shut up, okay? ONS is hard. This helped to validate my suckery, at least, because ONS completely destroyed me in the Dark Souls Massacre run that I streamed here recently. I spent probably 5 or 6 streams fighting just this one area, trying to get past ONS. And yeah, they were clapping my cheeks for sure. Like, loud clap, like you could hear it from the other room. Yeah! But something that was kind of interesting to me was the cathedral area. I would have thought more people died here. I mean, you can obviously see the lines in the center, which clearly show the catwalk part where they knock you off the edge, or you try to dodge a throwing knife and freaking roll off the side. So that makes sense. But then down at the bottom, hardly anybody died down there, so that was strange to me. But what about Blighttown? Probably the most infamous area in the entire game. Well, we have a map for that as well, although this one is built a little differently than the other two. So in this particular map, you see the spaghetti-like things that are falling down. That's because for this map, he actually like recreated the path of each death. So you can see like where it started and then where it ended. And in this, you have 2,756 bloodstained paths recorded. So as you can see, the main boss of Blighttown is gravity. I mean, look at how many people fell off the top there. It looks like teenagers toilet papered the whole arena, which honestly was a little surprising to me. Not really that a lot of people died from falling, that makes sense. But the strange thing is why haven't more people died in the poison? I mean, I feel like the poison was one of the most annoying parts of Blighttown, but maybe a lot of people don't die to it. It's just there to freaking annoy you as you're running around the world. But anyway, yeah, F Blighttown, right? So that's everything from the base game, which is cool in and of itself. But we do have one more juicy piece of data to go over, the DLC. But before we get into that, if you like this video, please leave a like, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see this kind of same type of thing, but in another one of the Souls games. So in the DLC area, we have 12,705 recorded bloodstains and 4,270 messages. But a cool thing that he did with this map is he actually gave us some numbers on the boss deaths, like how many people died to bosses as opposed to like the area or the enemies. So of that 12,705, 6,195 were actually deaths to bosses. But even further, he gave us percentages on which boss killed the most. So we'll start at the beginning of the DLC area with the Sanctuary Guardian. The Sanctuary Guardian accounted for 13.4% of the player deaths, which is about 830, which makes sense. I mean, it is kind of a difficult boss the first couple times you try, but usually by the third or fourth, fifth attempt, I would imagine most people will get past this boss. Next is Calamite. Calamite accounted for 27.3% of deaths, which is about 1,691. I would imagine this number would probably be a lot higher if this wasn't an optional boss. Also, there's probably a bunch of people that missed this boss. The first time I played through the DLC, I didn't even know it existed, and it wasn't until I went back through the DLC in the stream series that I was doing here recently that I actually found him and was able to beat him. So yeah, if people knew he was there and hit him on a more regular basis, he would probably rack up a lot more kills. Now we come to the most famous boss of the DLC, maybe in the entire game, Artorias. Artorias killed the most players out of all the bosses at 36.2%. which is 2,242. Now I would say Manus is the hardest boss of the DLC, but I think the reason Artorias killed more than Manus is that after players got through the Sanctuary Guardian, missed Calamite altogether more than likely, and then hit Artorias, this is probably another spot where players quit at and don't continue on. So therefore, not a lot of people make it to the final boss, Manus. But Artorias is a GOAT and my favorite boss in all of Dark Souls 1, so I find it fitting that he has the honor of most kills. So Manus is actually in third place at 23.1%, which is 1,431 deaths. Now it is interesting that he is lower than Calamite, even though I would say Manus is a much harder boss. But again, I think the reason is not a lot of people get here, and you might say, well, yeah, but not a lot of people find Calamite. But what I think happens is they hit Artorias, are exploring a little bit, and they find Calamite, and more people find Calamite than actually make it to the end of the DLC. Now that's just my speculation, I'm just guessing at that, but to me, Manus is much harder than Artorias and Calamite. So the boss ranking for the DLC, going by players killed, would be the Sanctuary Guardian in 4th place, Manus in 3rd, Calamite in 2nd, and then Artorias at number 1. Now just as a little bonus data, we also have messages, so let's go over those real quick. The first graph that I was able to find had to do with the age of messages. So this graph is based on 53,305 messages by 35,127 players. What it shows is the amount of messages being written from 2012 all the way through 2018. But one interesting observation he made in the comments was that many day one messages from when the game was released were still around at the time in 2018. And he noted that the average age of a message was 490 days, which isn't anything groundbreaking, but it is kind of cool to see that a lot of these messages are kind of preserved through time in a way. But the next thing is much more interesting than that. This graph answers the question of what message got written the most by the most players. So as you can see, the top three are, of course, Praise the Sun, I Did It, and Here. Praise the Sun was almost 7% of the messages, while I Did It was close to 5%, and then Here followed closely behind that. Now it makes a ton of sense that Praise the Sun is at the top. I mean, of course, that is the number one suspect that I would think would be there. But of course, you're probably wondering, where the heck is Amazing Chest Ahead? Shouldn't that be at like the tippy top with like 95%? Actually, Amazing Chest Ahead was way down at 28th with less than 1% of the total messages. Maybe they were just less gooners back in 2018, or more gay people.